For decades, Dick Van Dyke's timeless talent, resilience, and charm have brought joy and inspiration to millions of people. From his unforgettable performances to his amazing personal journey, he has consistently exceeded expectations. But now, something truly extraordinary has occurred, an event so significant that it is forcing the legendary entertainer to say goodbye in a way that no one could have imagined. Before we get to the big reveal, let's look back at the events that led to this important moment. You see, Dick Van Dyke grew up with his younger brother Jerry in a simple but loving home. Their dad used to be a baseball player and musician, but after Dick was born, he became a salesman, and their mom was a secretary. Life wasn't easy, especially during the Great Depression, but even though money was tight, his family always found a way to make ends meet. They weren't rich, but they had enough, and his parents weren't too strict about things like schoolwork. Laughter ran in the family, and Dick often said that his funny parents helped him develop his own sense of humor. He grew up in Danville, Illinois, a quiet, close-knit town that he called the perfect little American community. Neighbors were friendly, and trouble seemed to be a long way away. Dick got along well with his parents, but one story from his childhood still stands out. On his 18th birthday, his mom told him he was already 18, but the date didn't match up. It turned out they were lying about his birthday. His mom said he was born early because of complications, so they changed the date. Dick asked his grandmother the truth, and she told him that his parents had gotten pregnant before they were married in the 1920s, which was a big scandal. They changed the date to hide the truth, and his mom later confirmed it. It was shocking for Dick to find out he was a love child, but it didn't change how he felt about his parents or his upbringing. Soon after finding out his real age, Dick joined the Army Air Forces during World War II, even dropping out of high school to do so. He was eager to serve, but when he learned he might become a tail gunner on a B-24, he knew he had to change his plans. As a bomber was a dangerous job with a lot of deaths, so he decided it wasn't for him. Instead, he joined a group that entertained the troops, which seemed like a better fit for him because he loved performing. In high school, he was in choir and the drama club, which helped him prepare for his new role. When the war ended, Dick went home and threw himself into entertainment, never going back to finish high school. Dick Van Dyke was born to make people laugh. As a child in Illinois, he was surrounded by talented actors, such as Donald O'Connor, who would go on to become a Hollywood star. But acting wasn't always his plan. Coming from a religious family, he thought he might become a minister. That changed when he joined the school's drama club and fell in love with performing. He did a few plays and became hooked on acting. During high school, he was in musicals and even got a part-time job at a local radio station. When he was 20, he started dating Margie Willett, a girl from his hometown. They wanted to get married but didn't have the money, until a radio producer for the show Bride and Groom offered to pay for their wedding and honeymoon if they got married on air. In 1948, with 15 million listeners tuning in, Dick and Margie got married on the radio, and after the wedding, they moved to Los Angeles. Home life included an early heartbreak for Margie and a miscarriage for the couple. After getting better, they took their comedy act, The Merry Mutes, on the road and performed all over the country, making people laugh wherever they went. Over time, they had 4 children: Christian, Barry, Stacy, Carrie Beth, and Dick's career took off. But Margie stayed behind the scenes as an artistic soul. Many people knew Dick Van Dyke from his show, but what if we told you that Johnny Carson could have played Rob Petrie instead? It's hard to imagine the Dick Van Dyke Show without its famous star, but here's the catch. It wasn't always meant to be Carson's role. It all began with Carl Reiner's idea for a sitcom about a young married couple, one of whom worked on a TV show. Reiner originally planned to play Rob Petrie himself. CBS liked the idea and even approved the pilot, but they weren't sure about Reiner as the lead. They thought the show had a lot of potential and needed a different face at the helm. Reiner's Jewishness may have been a factor in their hesitation. In any case, the search began for a new Rob Petrie. One of the candidates was Johnny Carson, who would go on to become a late-night legend. Carson and Dick Van Dyke were the last two contestants. Dick got the part thanks to his success on Broadway in Bye Bye Birdie. The chemistry between Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore was one of the show's highlights, making them the perfect TV couple. But here's a surprising twist. Dick didn't want Mary on the show at first because he thought she was too young. She was 11 years his junior. But Carl Richter believed in Mary and cast her anyway, ignoring any. Reiner was worried that people wouldn't notice or care about the age gap. Dick was so nervous before filming the pilot that he lost 5 pounds in a week and got fever blisters. If you look closely, you can see one on his lip, which Carl Reiner later said was one of the most forgettable things that happened on the show. It was November 23, 1963, the day President Kennedy was killed. When the news came out, everyone was stunned into silence. They gathered around a radio to listen to the unthinkable. Carl Reiner, realizing the weight of the moment, sent everyone home for the day. Even though it was brilliant, the Dick Van Dyke Show didn't have an easy start. It was different, smart, funny, and even a little brave for its time. CBS almost canceled it after the first episode. Procter & Gamble, one of the show's biggest advertisers, wouldn't let it happen. They loved the show so much that they threatened to pull their ads if CBS moved it to a worse time slot. When the show started airing at the new time, the ratings went through the roof. It was an instant hit and could have gone on for years, but the cast and crew decided to end it after 5 seasons while they were still on top. Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore were big stars who were about to have even bigger careers. 5 years later, CBS wanted to bring Dick Van Dyke back to TV. The late 1960s had seen big changes in culture, like the hippie movement and the rise of color TV, and they were ready to meet all of his demands. Van Dyke got a guaranteed 3-year run for his new show, which meant that CBS couldn't cancel it early without paying him a lot of money. He also insisted on filming in Carefree, Arizona, where he lived, and CBS agreed. Even though the show started with high ratings but eventually dropped off, and it ended after 3 seasons, it was Van Dyke's return to TV, and he remained a regular presence on TV, unlike stars like George Clooney or Bruce Willis. Dick Van Dyke never quite made the jump from TV icon to movie superstar, even though Hollywood tried casting him in a number of comedies. In the 1960s and 1970s, he was in a lot of children's movies, but most of them didn't do well with audiences. He was also in Disney's Robin Crusoe, a comedy in the style of Buster Keaton, and a movie about a whole town trying to quit smoking. His performance in the drama The Morning After, which won him an Oscar, was one of the best of his career, but for many people, he will always be known as Rob Petrie, the charming, funny, and unforgettable star of the Dick Van Dyke Show. In 1975, Dick Van Dyke started dating Michelle Triola, his agent secretary, while he was still married to Margie Willett. Unlike Margie, who wasn't interested in Hollywood life, Michelle knew a lot about it and seemed to connect with Dick in a way that Margie didn't. In his memoir, Dick wrote that he would call his agent just to talk to Michelle. What started as casual lunches turned into dates. Their double lives became so stressful for Dick that he joked that having 2 relationships going at the same time was harder than working on his TV show. The stress made him lose weight. Eventually, he and Marge agreed to live separate lives. even though they were married for many years before getting divorced. After that, he lived with Michelle for decades, but they broke up. She never got married and never set a wedding date. The next year, Dick started a new variety show called Van Dyke and Company. It got off to a good start and even won an Emmy over Saturday Night Live in The Muppet Show, but it only lasted one season. He then joined The Carol Burnett Show, but things didn't go as planned. Carol Burnett had asked Dick to fill in for Harvey Korman, but the writers didn't like the way he wrote. Were still making jokes for Harvey, which made things awkward. Dick eventually quit the show, and Carol understood. She later wrote that they had hoped to make a great comedy duo, but the chemist just wasn't there. In 1988, Dick tried another sitcom with his son Barry called The Van Dyke Show, but it only lasted a few episodes. 5 years later, he found lasting success in Diagnosis Murder as a doctor who solved murders. Crimes was a hit with older viewers and ran for 8 years, but tragedy struck in 2008 when Dick's first wife Margie died of cancer. Even though they had been divorced for years, Dick wrote that her death felt like losing a part of himself. The next year, Michelle Tripoli also died. For Dick, losing two important partners so close together was very painful. He remembered Tra's illness. He tried to stay positive for her, even acting like he didn't know how serious it was when she asked. He said it was the hardest acting he'd ever done. Dick eventually found love again with Arlene Silver, a makeup artist he met at the 2006 SAG Awards. He was drawn to her beautiful eyes, and Arlene said she didn't recognize him as a performer at first, but as a person. They became close after Dick lost Michelle, and Arlene often brought him food afterward. He fell for her kindness and support, even though they were 46 years apart in age. They got married on February 29, 2012, and Dick said their relationship was one of the best decisions he's ever made. He said that their differences made each other perfect. She's wise beyond her years, and he's playful and immature. On their first wedding anniversary, he said that married life was amazing and credited Arlene with keeping him happy and young. The couple has a son together. While doing chores, Arlene often dances around the kitchen, and Dick says it's impossible to be sad in their house because there's always singing and dancing. When they're not traveling, they work on a TV show about their life together. At first, the show was about Dick's career, but it changed focus to show that love can happen at any age. But just when things seemed to be getting better, life threw Dick another curveball. In August 2013, Dick Van Dyke posted a picture of his completely destroyed Jaguar on Twitter with the caption, "Jaguar for sale, real cheap." It wasn't a joke. While he was driving on a California highway, his car suddenly caught fire. He was able to get out, but he needed help. TMZ was the first to report on the incident, showing that the car was already on fire when he was. As usual, Dick was able to make the scary situation funny with his tweet. At the same time, he had been dealing with another serious problem for 7 years. He had a mysterious neurological problem that made his head sound like it was beating every time he laid down. He was so tired that no doctor could figure out what was wrong, so he turned to Twitter for help. A few weeks later, he found out that the noise and pain were coming from his dental implants. Once the problem was fixed, the noise and pain went away. Dick Van Dyke's sense of humor and charm have always been part of his public image. However, he had personal problems that he kept secret for many years. In the 1960s and 1970s, when celebrity lives weren't as public, he was able to hide his drinking problem on Oprah's show in 2016. He started drinking to deal with his shyness and feel more comfortable in social situations, but over time it became a problem. He later told his guardian that he had been an alcoholic for 25 years and that it had hurt his family. On the podcast Bullseye with Jesse Thorne, he talked about those years and said he didn't even realize he had a problem because he drank too much at home and smoked too much. At one point, he was smoking up to 3 packs of cigarettes a day. He called it the worst addiction and tried and failed to quit for years. It wasn't until an X-ray of his lungs showed the early signs of emphysema that he finally quit smoking for good. Dyke has been open about how these addictions affected his mental health. He said he struggled with depression and even thought about hurting himself. He finally got help through rehab and Alcoholics Anonymous, which was a turning point. He said that one day drinking stopped making him feel good and instead made him sick, which is when he decided to quit, even though it wasn't easy. He's been smoke and alcohol free for many years now, but the effects of his bad habits are still there. He's had lung problems like pneumonia and a collapsed lung. Despite these problems, Dick Van Dyke has used. By being open about his struggles, he's helped others feel less alone in their fights with addiction. He's especially proud that a rehab center in New York is named after him to honor the effect his story has had on so many lives. You might think that after 60 years in the spotlight, Dick Van Dyke would be retired by now, but he's about to turn 100 and is still going strong, making appearances, acting, and even tap dancing. Today, Dick said that he doesn't think he'll ever retire because it's too much fun. He told Larry King that getting older has been the best time of his life because he loves spending time with his wife and is thrilled that he can still sing and dance. His energy and positivity may be why he's still so popular today. In 2021, Dick was honored at the Kennedy Center Honors for his amazing career with Mary Poppins. He was given the award by co-star Julie Andrews, who said, "He seems to have found the secret to happiness, and he's proof that age doesn't have to slow you down." Recently, Dick played a man with amnesia who doesn't know who he is on Days of Our Lives. It turns out that he's the father of one of the main characters, and they reunite on the show. He even did a tap dance with actor Bill Hayes for the role, which earned him an Emmy nomination, and at almost 100, he broke the record. Last year, Dick went on Ed on the Masked Singer dressed as a gnome, but he was voted off first. When everyone realized it was him, he got a standing ovation, and Judge Nicole Scherzinger got so emotional that she started crying. Dick said he had never seen the show before being invited, but he thought it looked like fun. He called it the weirdest thing he'd ever done. Dick sang a popular song from Mary Poppins, which really impressed the crowd. He still works out 3 times a week, doing yoga, stretching, and using exercise machines to stay strong. He recently talked on a podcast about how important it is for him to stay active and how much he enjoys it. As his 100th birthday approaches in December, Dick Van Dyke is planning a big party. He said his 99th birthday was a lot of fun. Low-key, so he's putting everything he has into this goal.